I've set up this little test board to show how the heater valve works on a Porsche 944. It's very similar on many Porsches from the same era. The basic idea is there is a mechanical valve that either allows hot coolant into the cabin or doesn't. When the little valve is open, like this, hot coolant can flow into the cabin, and when vacuum is applied to this canister, it pulls the canister shut and it blocks the flow of coolant. To show it in action, I hooked up a little vacuum pump to the valve, just to show that when vacuum is applied, it closes the valve. If the valve doesn't close or doesn't hold vacuum, then it's just broken and needs to be replaced. And of course, when there's no vacuum, the valve opens up again. In real life, on the car, things are not this simple. Rather than just having the vacuum go directly to the heater valve, it goes to a little electronic solenoid under the dash on the side of the HVAC console. And so the vacuum goes into this little solenoid, and then that solenoid acts like a switch, and it either lets vacuum through to the heater valve or it doesn't. Of course, in real life, the vacuum hoses are harder to follow than they are on my little test board. So here's a diagram that shows how they're set up on the actual car. The pinkish red hoses are the vacuum from the engine. They go into the end of the solenoid, just like on the test board. And the yellow hose coming out of the solenoid is the one that controls the valve. They both go through a little bulkhead connector that's on the firewall that's kind of trapped behind the back of the engine. So here, this little box is kind of simulating the HVAC climate control module in the dash. And right now it's off, so there's no power to this. So when there's no power, even though there's vacuum, this guy blocks off this port. Does not allow vacuum to get to the heater valve, and so the heater valve stays open and the cabin stays hot. Now what happens when the climate control module powers this guy up, do that. Now, when there's vacuum, this port gets connected directly to this port and the heater valve closes. So when you turn it off, heat comes back on. When the guy is not powered up, what happens is this port that goes to the heater valve is open to the, I'd call it the exhaust of the solenoid. And of course, this solenoid is controlled by the heater control module or the HVAC module under the dash. And so if you wanted to gain easy access to test the solenoid, you can remove the climate control unit from the dash to gain access to the three connectors behind it. Here's what that looks like with the climate control unit removed from the car. A4 is in the middle connector of those three, and A4 itself is in the top row, second from the far right. When you apply power to pin A4, you should hear the solenoid click if you listen closely, and you should also have vacuum flowing all the way to the heater valve. Another test you can run is to check the amount of resistance between pin A4 and ground. If the wiring is all okay and the solenoid coil is okay, you should get around 50 to 75 ohms. The last thing I just wanted to show, if you do have a bad solenoid and you need to replace it, don't be tempted to try to pull a connector off right there. That's not a connector. When they sell these new, they come with this harness, 2-wire harness that has 2 pins on the end. This piece doesn't come with the part because it's a connector, and both of the solenoids have their little pins going here. So when it's all assembled, there'll be 2 pins from one solenoid and 2 pins from another solenoid that go in here. And your job, once you take the other side of this connector off, is to figure out how to get these pins off. And to do that, see if you can see it right here. There's a little tab on the end. Try to, right there. Try to get a screwdriver in there and just push one back. Hopefully it holds up like that. Then you go to the other side and you push that one back. And once they're both pulled back, you should be able to pull this little flap up. That exposes the pins, but they still don't pull out. Then you got to go to the back side, and you'll see that there's little tangs holding them in place. So then you take your screwdriver and you pull those little tangs back. So if you can see that, I've got the little tab pulled back on that side, and that should free up the pin so it can be pulled out. And do the same thing with the other one. Once you pull that little tab out of the way, the pin just pulls out. And then this is how it comes when you buy a new solenoid. And the idea is you put the pins into the back end to this little connector doohickey. Couldn't be easier, especially when you're laying on your back, trying to look up into a super dark space. Have fun.